Welcome to Paranormal or Reality. On today's video, we explore some ghost stories. First, we take a look at an abandoned hospital, then we investigate a haunted house. Now make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this. Let's begin. My husband and I were camping on a lake in a remote part of northwestern Montana. One of the nights was rowdy for our crew. Some were drunk, some were smoking. You get the idea. It got down to just 5 of us that night. Probably 2:30 a.m., sitting around the campfire laughing and having our good time as our other friends needed to head back into town so they could work in the morning. One of my friends was on my right side in her camping chair, blackout drunk. To her right was another friend who was either on drunk or high. My other friend and husband were both buzzed. The 2 drunk ones were bickering back and forth in their drunken mess over God knows what at that point. They all decided to sing happy birthday to me, as it was my birthday. The drunk one directly across from me looked up and smiled, but she was looking through or past me. Her eyes were black, no white outline at all. It shook me so much that I started to get up out of my chair, but then suddenly there was a distraction. From behind me, we hear, very distinctively, an elderly Native American woman voice. When you live in Montana, you know that accent. Say, "Hey, keep it down. People are trying to sleep." I jolted upright and looked at my husband. He was mirroring my expression. We both slowly turned around, looking into the darkness behind us, and didn't see anyone. There was one other camper at this primitive campground. At the other end of the campground, probably 2 football fields away. But it was so quiet you could hear them snoring from where we sat around our fire. As we were giving each other a look of what was that, the drunk friend to my right sloppily turned in her camping chair and called out behind us in a blackout slur. "It's a free country, we're having fun. You don't need to tell us what to do." And nonchalantly goes back to sipping her whiskey bottle. I look up at my friend who was buzzed. She is staring at me wide eyes, nodding her head in agreement that she heard it too, and she is going to quiet down. Then she looks to her right at our other drunk friend whose eyes had turned black and got really wide-eyed. She also saw our friend's eyes that are not her normal eyes. She literally got up and went to her tent, like straight Irish goodbye. I'll also add my husband was coming down from shots of whiskey. I was buzzed, but not wasted like the others. The one with the black eyes abruptly said, "All right, party's over," and very creepily crawled to her tent, probably because she was too drunk to walk, but crawling not in a normal way. I'm not sure how to describe it other than it was like she was possessed. The other drunk friend was falling asleep in her chair next to me at that point, so my husband put the fire out and we went to our tent. I will never forget that woman's voice behind us in the darkness. In hindsight, there is actually an old burial ground nearby. I think it's safe to say when you mess around, you find out. When you need to keep the peace, you better keep the peace. Both drunk friends had zero recollection of any of this the following day when we were all awake and packing up. Just my husband and our other friend, who was present enough in her own state of consciousness. None of us told our other friend about her black eyes because we didn't want to scare her. But I really think whatever was in the woods that night took over her in a way to end the party so that the resting could rest. As we were packing up, we saw the other camper who was there that night. My husband joked with the guy and said, "Hey, I'm sorry if we were too loud last night. We were celebrating a birthday." The guy literally said he didn't hear us at all. He had just finished a 32-mile solo hike, and when he reached the campsite, set up his tent, he had a meal and passed out. Didn't hear a thing. So with that being said, it wasn't the young male hiker with the elderly Native woman's voice. So spooky. We returned to that lake many more times over the years and have been peaceful and treated the place with respect. We loved the lake so much we named our daughter after it. This isn't the best of the Jerome Grand Hotel ghost stories. There's many from other guests. But it's what I experienced when I stayed there for a night last year. A friend and I were doing a road trip from Phoenix to Antelope Canyon and back, and had planned to stay at the haunted hotel in Jerome for a night. It's a very well-known haunted spot because it used to be the old copper mining town's only hospital for decades, and they estimate around 9,000 people had died in it. Great. We really wanted to try sleeping there for a night. It's an old building, with a cool old elevator too, and floors 2 to 4 are where the hotel rooms are. We checked in and got our keys to our room on the second floor, put our stuff down, and went out to a nearby restaurant for dinner. We went out to a bar after that and came back around 12:30 a.m., and I wanted to walk the halls and shoot some photos to see if I could see anything. I grabbed my camera and we head up the stairs around 1 a.m. to the third floor, when as we're walking up, I felt this intense static come on in the air, and I feel all prickly, like spider webs. Had not experienced that before. We kind of just walk around the hall a bit and look and listen. There's a lot of stuff in the hallways, side tables, hutches, pamphlets, etc. I knew there were mostly older retired tourist guests staying there that weekend, LOL Arizona, and it was very quiet, no TV noise or anything. But it felt so buzzy, like I was in an electrical conduit. When we reached the end of a hallway, all of a sudden, I hear the loudest echoing weeping cry of a woman in one of the rooms, like someone really sad. It gives me chills right now thinking about it. No music with it, and did not sound like a television, but an actual echoing voice that was carrying, just sobbing, crying. Right on the other side of a door we were near. I remember looking at my friend with a face like, "Oh shit, that's awkward," and she goes, "Did you just whisper something to me?" She had not heard the sobbing, but heard a whisper instead. Right then, someone coughs in the hallway, so we hightail it out into the stairwell again. We run up the 4th floor. The buzzing was gone. It just lifts. This floor felt chill and normal. Very quiet. Nothing strange. Took some more pictures and walked all the way back to our floor again. The crazy part is, we kept getting shocked by things on the way back. Everything metal that I touched shocked me. A radiator, a door hinge, a door handle. When I put our key into the doorknob, I saw a tiny little bolt like you do from static electricity. It was insane. Usually you get shocked once and it clears, but we were getting shocked on things for about 10 minutes straight until it stopped. We really did have static. Have never had something like that happen in my life. Luckily, nothing happened in our hotel room. We found out it was half of the men's ward and a restroom back in the hospital days, so nothing too spooky. The next morning when we checked out, I certainly had questions. Without telling the front desk what had happened to us, I asked about the activity on the floors. She was like, "Well, the 3rd floor always has the most activity. The 4th and 2nd floors have some, but the 3rd floor is the one everyone mentions." I asked what was in the areas where we heard the crying and coughing. Get this, the end of the hallway with the weeping was a maternity ward, and those rooms were patient rooms. She said only one of them was occupied that night, but it was the next door. We were standing right in front of where the crying was. People also see a woman over there, and sometimes hear babies crying or kids running around. Down the hall from that, where we heard a cough, was the freaking tuberculosis ward. I told her what we had heard. She seemed very unaffected, like, "Yeah, that sounds pretty common." Crazy. There were no speakers or anything anywhere, just a really nice and helpful staff of locals and a very old building with cool artifacts from its hospital days. The guest books were filled with experiences. I left this one in there too. I cannot believe I fell asleep at my boyfriend's house. When I woke up, it was 1 a.m., and I had an 8 a.m. morning class, 2 hours away. I hate driving that far so late, or early. I also hate not getting enough sleep during the night. I got dressed and headed out. I had to admit, getting out of the city had never been so pleasant without the normal traffic, and it was cool enough to roll down a window without feeling like you're sitting in an oven. My music was blasting. There was nothing but the open road, me and the occasional car or truck. Surprisingly, I wasn't even that tired. It was pitch black out. All you could see was what my headlights illuminated, and a billion stars up above. It was beautiful. Driving across the plateau was my favorite part of the trip. During the daylight, you could see the vegetation start to change and some beautiful mountains in the background. The temperature had dropped a little, and I was singing along to my driving playlist at the top of my lungs, perfuming yet another great car concert. At the same time, I was constantly scanning the side of the road for coyotes or other wildlife that may wander into the road. If you've ever had close encounters with game, you know how important this is. Mid-song, I saw something move from the right side of the road. The entire thing happened extremely fast, but I remember every detail. My peripheral vision caught something white, causing unusual contrast just outside of the range of my headlights up ahead. As my eyes focused, I saw that it was on the move, towards the road. I still couldn't see what it was, but it sure had my attention at this point. I started to ease off the gas, just in case. I also turned down the music. As it moved into my headlights' range, I could make out the figure of a woman in a white robe or dress, moving at a fairly quick pace. I could tell that if we both kept speed, we would collide up ahead. Between her long, flowing white dress and the shrubs on the side of the road, I couldn't see her legs, but I knew she was running, fast. For a split second, I doubted my sanity. A woman in a white dress, in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the night? Maybe I was more tired than I thought. She was still running towards the road, but she seemed to have slowed down a little. I could now see her long blonde hair, and I was trying to get a look at her face, to see her expression, to figure out if she had taken notice of my car plowing down the freeway, to see if she was running towards me to get my attention, if she was scared, or if she was maybe laughing and it was all a late-night prank. Anything really, anything to help me figure out my next steps, after not hitting her, obviously. I slowed down considerably, but I still wasn't sure if I was actually going to stop the car. I had heard stories of women in distress stopping cars of people that were then never found alive ever again. No thank you. She was almost to the edge of the road now, right ahead of me. I still couldn't make out her face, but I could tell she wasn't even looking in my direction. She hadn't noticed me or the car at all. I slammed on my brakes hard and swerved into the left lane, completely unnecessarily. The second she had reached to the pavement, she disappeared, disintegrated, just went up in smoke right at the edge of the road. With my car barely rolling at walking speed, I searched the side of the road. No trace of a woman. I searched the road behind me, ahead of me, next to me. Nothing. No woman, no other cars, nothing. For a second, I thought about getting out and looking for her, but decided against it. I took note of the milepost and drove off. Was that even real? Was I so tired I was giving shape to the shadows? Why would shadows be bright white? If she was real, where did she go? I took out my cell phone and called the police. I decided to word the incident differently because I wanted them to actually drive out there and check, and not have me committed instead. I told the operator that I was driving, and I thought I saw a woman wandering around next to the highway near the milepost I took note of, that it seemed weird for someone to be out there in the middle of nowhere in the middle of the night, but that I was alone and didn't feel safe stopping. The answer I got was that highway patrol was not far from there and they would check it out. I remember checking the news for weeks, but nothing unusual about that area was ever reported, other than a few accidents or roadwork alerts on the highway. For years, I tried to convince myself I imagined the whole thing, until I came across stories about the lady in white. I don't know if that's what it was, but I know I saw something that night. I used to be a contractor installing fetal monitoring systems in hospitals. One trip I had to work for a few days at a hospital in Fort Oglethorpe, GA. One day I was waiting on materials to be able to continue working, so I went to Fort Oglethorpe to kill some time. They have a road that runs through the fort, so you can cruise through and check things out. On the left side of the road, there was a clearing path that ran between the forest. I looked down that path and saw a man dressed in Confederate uniform on horseback. I got excited because I thought they might be getting ready to do some kind of reenactment or maybe a tour. The road circles back to the beginning, so I went to the office and asked if they were going to do one of those. She said they were going to have one in a few weeks. I told her the reason I was asking was I saw the Confederate-dressed guy on a horse. She did not look shocked at all and said there were no horses on the property and people weren't allowed to ride there. I looked confused. Then she said it wasn't the first time someone had seen this in that same area. Creeped me out, but at the same time my adrenaline was pumping. It's what got me started looking into the paranormal. Thanks for tuning in. Watch another video if you dare.